All right, we're back. This is game number 4. And as a Turd sent me in a message, this is the most unbalanced Tezuka has gone so far. The Turds hasn't seen any of the other games. Um, because Tezuka only has sevens in two directions. Now, Deli has really switched it up. You don't see this a ton from Deli. He has kept three of his more powerful 7/6s, but he has decided to go more horizontal vertical. And you'll notice in previous games, he had some difficulty taking sevens down. And he has switched into a hand with a little more tools to deal with them. That's really interesting to see. I was thinking maybe you run 4-6-4-7, but Deli was pretty committed to Tonberry King, and you can't run two cards with the same number combo. But and I don't actually. It's FF decks only. I haven't checked what's available. But 4-6-4-7 and 7-4-6-4 seem like interesting cards to me. That I'm surprised on the side to sides we're seeing 7-6-5-3s and 7-6-5-4s, but no 7-6-4-4s. So my thought on Tezuka's hand was I think the idea is to start Poo Poo in 1 or 7 with 6-2-6-6 as your recapture, creating a clear difficulty for the opponent. And if that's the case, you got to check Deli's hand to see if he can set up against it. And Deli cannot set up against it going across from it. 1 met by 3 or 7 met by 9. So then you got to check if he can set up in 5. And he can set up 8 from 5 with exactly 4-6-7-5. Nothing else, though. Can he set up for 5 against 2? Yes, with 6-7-2-5. So he does have some ability to deal with it both ways. But if you're Tezuka, that means you have a really good chance to draw a card out of Deli's hand. I think if you're Tezuka, I hate how it's so side to side, not up down. But I think you're clearly more down than up. So probably 3-8-2-1 and 7 is more desirable. But Deli plays 4-7-6-5 and 5, and that doesn't really set you up. It would be great if it set you up. And if you go 3-8-2-1 and 1, it's not like 5 sets you up there either. Now I think that's uncomfortable. Okay, well, this brings us to my actual idea, which is I think that is a very good second turn strategy because second turn wants to create challenge. First turn wants weak corners. I think Poo Poo and 9 is the correct move. And I wish it was named something else because I don't enjoy saying that. So 3-8-2-1 in 9. Seems to me like the way to go. 6-2-6-6 is a really good recapturer because it recaptures with high stuff facing out that you do have ways to capture back, mostly. Um, so I think so. My argument for rares, and I think I'm pro rares, is the goal is on second turn you play it in 1 or 7, specifically with 3-8-2-1. A different rare has different squares. On second turn, they have to go first, and wherever they go, 1 of 1 or 7 will be available, and you can create a really strong challenge there and threaten to go in 4 next. And so you get it out of your hand. It is a bad card. You want to play it early, and you create a real challenge for them that their hand just will not be built to meet. On first turn, you do the opposite. Instead of 1 or 7, you go 3 or 9. And you say, this is a weak corner. Second turn, I need to challenge. Second turn I've talked about this over and over in these videos. Second turn must play something first turn can't take at some point. Or force first turn into incorrect structures. First turn just wants to sweep everything. What's the easiest card to sweep? Well, most cards, if you look at Deli's hand, the weak sides of the cards are a 5-2, a 3-4, a 3-6, a 3-6, a 4-5. These are actually pretty clunky and difficult to take on a rule set where it's hard to have like 6-7-6-3s could sweep these things, but most things can't that are available, that are allowed. So the one thing that truly creates a weak corner that's easy to take back is a rare. And I think the upside here is you use the rare's weak side. So I think I'm actually team rare. on this exact rule set, nothing else. Which is to say, I think on second turn the rare goes in 1 or 7, and on first turn it goes in 3 or 9. Tezuka's hand is a bit unbalanced. It's significantly better down than up, and it's significantly better side to side than up or down. So I think, yeah, exactly. I'm excited to finally see this in action. We haven't seen it, and I thought this was the best tool. I think Tezuka so far this match has done really good hand switches. Um, I don't like his hand this time. He's got all these sixes down and a 6 7 2 5. Maybe the idea is it can sweep his sixes down, but I think it's kind of redundant and too much side to side and too little variation in the sevens. I think it's a difficult hand, but Tezuka has made crazy stuff work. But this is the starter I've been wanting to see. This kind of starter. And if we start looking from Deli's perspective, what do you do? If you play 4 6 7 5 and 1, which looks like your most challenging move, then I think Tezuka plays something like 3 7 6 3 and 5, and 1 5 6 7 is really good in both 2 and 4. That might not be the best reply. The best reply, yeah, that's probably not the best reply, but I'm not sure what the best reply is. But there could easily be better than that, but it seems a very viable reply. Um, I'm not sure there is better than that. And so as long as you have play and they can't immediately create challenges for you, it's really promising. 6 7 2 5 and 7, as we've seen a million times. We have 6 7 2 5 and 8 for Tezuka. Um, 3 5 6 7 and 3. Deli can't take back from 2, so you can attack it immediately. Yeah, 4 6 7 5 and 1 looks natural, but 3 7 6 3 and 5 looks like a nice reply. I think Deli should hold there because Tezuka then doesn't actually have that good play in 6 or 8. Um, but it's still pretty good looking. Yeah. So I think this is the right way to start, and I think we might for the first time this series see first turn not behind. Every game so far, first turn has been behind in this match. And if you look at the matches so far, Selders or Smokes went kind of back and forth. Uh, that one's not so clear. Yeah, maybe not so clear if you look at the other matches, but I've been thinking second turn is favored and easier to play. And that in general, first turn has done well when second turn had a really unbalanced hand. But as long as second turn ran out something pretty balanced, second turn is in good shape. There was a game DJ came very close to winning against Vid on first turn, but my suspicion is second turn's easier to play. But I think that this turns it around. I think what first turn needs is weakness, and this creates weakness. So I'm so excited to see this starter because it's the thing I've been looking for in past games, and it is I think a really smart idea behind a rare starter. I think you look at this rule set, and it's easy to conclude that basically the hands Deli's been running, whether this exact one or not, is the kind of only viable option. You just run a pile of the best 7 6s possible, just running down the numbers. And that's what I would do too, right? I'm firm. If I saw this rule set, I'd do exactly what Deli is doing. But Tezuka is showing there is a different approach to it that has real value. I did not realize this until I saw Tezuka's first hand using a rare and combining it with the 6 2 6 6. But one thing I was not sure about, especially because he kept putting his rares in 5, though I think that was specific to the situation, was if he was intending to use it on first turn ever as a weak corner. And now he has done so. And I'm also curious, Deli didn't give him a good chance to, so we didn't see if he was interested in it. But on second turn, if he was going to play it as a strong corner, which is, I think, the good use of rares, and I think we're seeing Tezuka do it. And that is a really creative idea on this set that I would not have thought of. And now I'm like super committed to the idea because when I see something I think is clever and unfamiliar to me but instantly makes sense, I sometimes over jump to that as correct. I do swing that way sometimes, and or at least not necessarily correct because everything my just form of thinking is more probabilistic than like this is 100%, this is 0%. But it goes to there is a very high probability that this is strong, um, and probably swings wider than it should. But I'm really excited to see this, and apologies to Delhi, but we are going to be looking at this game from Tezuka's perspective because he is doing the interesting thing here to my eyes. Now, who knows? Delhi's going to play some wild move in 2 or 4 or whatever, and then it's going to be like, okay, we're looking at this from Delhi's perspective. But I think this is a. I don't love Tezuka's hand. It does have the key synergies to reply to 4, 6, 7, 5, and 1, which looks like it could be really dangerous. So it's probably better than I'm giving it credit for because if you look at it and you're like, that's ugly, but then every time you calculate a line, you're like, oh, that makes sense, then it probably actually does make sense. But I've only calculated one line at all. So, it's not that big a test. So, yeah, I think we're seeing something really interesting. Specifically, a really interesting thing to spot in hand building, which is no combo weak corners gain in strength, but the stipulations made weak combos basically unavailable. And Tezuka found a way to run a weak corner that wouldn't be a problem on second turn because he can play it as a strong corner on second turn. And maybe other players in other matchups did this and I just didn't catch it. But I think what Tezuka's doing is really cool. Delhi does go in 1. I should start putting this game in. 4, 6, 7, 5, 1. I had started. Good for me. And now I'm expecting 3, 7, 6, 3 in 5, and I'm going to pause for a moment. I will be back, but I'm excited. All right, we're back, and I was thinking, I did a recent like hand scoring thing, and it had all kinds of potential issues with it. Um, but one thing that popped out was Tezuka as like a slightly above average hand maker, but not adding much value with his hands. When he's known as a very, very good hand maker. And Piggy showed up a little stronger, but a smaller sample, so take it with a grain of salt. Um, but one thing that's interesting is clearly Tezuka can get up to hands the solver thinks are a little above average without doing the kind of conventional things others are doing. And that, I think, has value, right? That he's playing hands that are not built or with the ideas that most hands are built with, but they're not significantly worse than the better hand stuff, right? That he's doing stuff that's still pretty good, but quite different than what anyone else is doing is really neat and interesting and deserves credit. Um, as I said, I also do like what Delhi did here with his hand. I think switching it up was a good decision, and he also switched it up in a way that specifically countered what his previous hand was weak against. And I think that's a good thing to do. If you're on like I'm gonna play 7 6s, powerful 7 6s, which is probably the most reasonable thing to be on, and that's what Delhi is on, then when you make switches, you could just rotate your hand, right? You could just be like, okay, I'll flip some of the corners, I'll just do a slightly different version. But you could also say, I want to flip and be just specifically not just like use slightly different cards, but make sure the cards play a little better or clearly better against whatever I was weakest against. And his previous hand had troubles with sevens down, and this hand has 6 3 7 3, which is a really reliable beater of sevens down. So I think when you're making this switch where you make like little alterations to the hand, it's really nice to pick up kind of wins in spots you didn't have wins before. All right, Tezuka does play the move I had predicted here, uh, where 1 5 6 7, 1 5 6 7 has ended up with a shocking amount of combo, not combo potential. There is no combo, but plus potential over the games. I was talking about cards available with turds, and I mentioned 3763, and he said, "Weird that there's 3763s on level 5, but I guess there's got to be a few." And I said, "It's probably Mystic Quest," and he said, "Probably." And then he went, "Nope, I do know that card. Yeah, it's Mystic Quest." And then he pointed out that means 6553s are available. And if anyone can win on this rule set running 6553 type cards, they're like, it's 5635. I don't remember the exact number configuration. Kudos to you. Another thing I wanted to mention was 3 types of cards. I started talking about it before, but I got completely sidetracked. Not sure if it was this video or a previous video, whatever. I'm sure it was a previous video. Where there are wheel cards, 6725, where you go from the strongest number, the 7, next to it's the next strongest, next to it's the next strongest, and either clockwise or counterclockwise from a starting point of its highest number, you can go from its highest to its lowest. So 7346 is a wheel card, 1567 is a wheel card, 6725 is a wheel card. This game has 4 wheel cards. Some cards defy categorization. 3763 and 6266, I think, don't quite fit this because they're halfway in between two. Then there's side Z. I couldn't come up with a name. Something that goes both ways. I need a word for something that goes both ways, like 3657 or 6373. Deli's running 2 of them. I call them horizontal verticals. I'd like a better name for them. If you have one, please suggest it. Maybe I'll come up with one by the end of the video. I want it to be 1 syllable. Doesn't have to be 5 letters. I want it to be 1 syllable. I want it to be like glaive, but I don't really think of a glaive as sort of a two-faced equal sides, or 2 opposite directions weapon. But anyhow, so 6373 is like that. And then there's what I think of as spear cards, which is the highest number is surrounded by the next highest numbers. So 4675 would be a wheel if it was 5674, right? Because from the 7 you could go around. But as is, the 7 is surrounded by the next 2 numbers, and I think of that as a spear. It is stabbing downwards. The blade on the spear, juts out a little to the sides, but the back of the spear is not bladed at all, right? So I think of those as spear cards. And in this game, and in this match in general, we've not seen very many spear cards. 3A21 is technically a spear card, but I think is more just monodirectional. And cards like 3763, which is sort of halfway in between a spear and wheel, because depending on which 3 you give the tie to, I think 3763 is closer to a wheel card because of the specific nature of the card. Because I think, much like a wheel card, the plus wall potential is around the plus wall potential is around the 6, right? And so it's closer to like a 7632 than it is to a 7634 in my head, right? Because the 7634, the 4 starts playing with stuff. Here, the 3 is not playing with the number next to it, but both the 3s are playing with the 6. And to me, that says this is closer to a wheel card, but this is very much just in my head nonsense. 6266, to me, feels closer to a spear card. It feels closer to, it's going to land somewhere on the right, and it's going to have 3 numbers high out facing, and it's going to sweep there, and just in a way closer to how a wheel card does. So in my head, they don't actually fit the categorizations, but 3763 is somewhere in between, but closer to a wheel, and 6266 is closer to a spear. And I need a word for the other one. Let's Google things that go 2 opposite directions. So dumb. What is a word for 2 opposing things? Antithetical, contrary, opposite. This is not what we're looking for. Weapon that stabs two directions. I don't know. Um, no, there's now looking for things that are good at stabbing and slicing. That's not what I'm talking about at all. Um, like I'm looking for like two arrows going opposite directions. One word that like means that. I'd really like to have a good word for this, like one that like immediately evokes it. For me, the wheel evokes it. It spins around, and okay, wheels don't get weaker as they spin round, but like to me, it's this circular motion that I think wheel, right? You go clockwise or counterclockwise, and something happens as you follow that trajectory. That to me, in my head, wheel. Really strong facing one direction with kind of supporting power, but much less power facing the opposite direction. To me, spear, I think of the card Ward, A728. To me, is a spear pointing upwards, much as Ward uses a spear. That's the card that engraved it in my head. But I want a better word for 6373, because I don't like saying horizontal verticals, because of course it is only one of those, but it is only both of those that describes the whole category, but it's too long to say. I want something quick. I want glaive cards, right? Something I can just say like one syllable, you know, wrap it up. Okay, Deli does something interesting to me. Now, that is safe, so it's going to be a perfectly reasonable move. But the reason it's interesting to me is because the squares that were better for Tezuka are 2 and 4. And Deli has gotten rid of one of the squares that Tezuka had less play in, 6 and 8. But I think this makes a ton of sense because if Tezuka goes 8, Deli has very nice play in 7, and Tezuka doesn't have 3. So I now think Deli's ahead. Um, I've switched. And I think Tezuka has to be pretty careful here. Now, how careful do you have to be, right? Let's say you play 6, 7, 2, 5, and 8, and Deli takes in 7. You can just, and you could have done it with 6, 2, 6, 6. Either of those in 8, Deli takes from 7, you chuck the other one in 3. I guess you do lose there. Scratch that, because you don't have triple captures, you only have double captures. You needed to flip something. Okay, then this is dangerous. So let's be careful. Let's think. Okay. So if you play, I think actually, I still think either of those cards in 8, but say you play 6, 2, 6, 6, and 8. You make it 6, 4. Deli goes in 7, 6, 7, 5, 2. I think you can play, or 6, 7, 2, 5. I think you can play 6, 7, 2, 5, and 4. No, you can't. You need to flip 1. Uh, I was thinking because if you force 3, 6, 5, 7, and 2, you actually do have the double capture at the end you need. But you didn't flip 1, so they can play 6, 3, 7, 3, and 2, and you lose. Ah. Now this is scary. So another thing you could do is you could play 3. Maybe, no. Yeah, 6, 2, 6, 6, and 3. You're going to go down 8, 2. No, that's not going to work. Oh, is 5 a really bad move? Felt like this should be a decent spot, but just don't take anything. You really don't want to have to use 1, 5, 6, 7, and 8. But it is the only card that leaves you with nothing the opponent can attack. And I guess you're guaranteed some captures. So maybe you have to play 1, 5, 6, 7, and 8. That's clunky to find, but you should hold the tie there. You're down 6, 4. Um, but anywhere they play, you can attack stuff. For instance, they could take safety in 7 with a 6 up, but then you play 6, 7, 2, 5, and 4, you make it 5-5, and anything they put in 2, 6-2-6-6 can take from 3. So I think you survive with 1, 5, 6, 7, and 8. And like in one sense, that's not hard to find because it's just play the move that's safety and locks in a card. But in another sense, it is hard to find because in my head, I was kind of locked to that card goes in 2 or 4. He's picked it up. Okay. Tezuka is quicker than me. Is there a case for putting it anywhere else? Because it lands pretty well in 4, right? Then your 6-7-2-5 completely sweeps the bottom. Maybe it goes in 4. Maybe it can go in 4 as well. Where you have 6-2-6-6 for the top, and that's not going to do too bad there. And you have 6-7-2-5 for the bottom, and that's going to do great. 5-5-7-3, 6-4. Yeah, that should tie as well. But sort of curious because, like, in a combo game, you'd be thinking, I must hold on to 1-5-6-7. And in this non combo game, it's, I must use 1-5-6-7. I think he has to use it. There might be other ties, but I at least haven't seen them. Yeah. I think he has to play 1-5-6-7. He picks it up. But I think this was more dangerous than I expected it to be and speaks to how well second turn is doing. And also, I think speaks to I really like Tezuka's starter idea. I'm going to pause so I can sneeze. I never used to have like pollen allergies, but I think they might be getting to me this season. All right, he goes 1-5-6-7 and 4, which I think works. But I think again, second turn got good play here. So if Deli ever goes in 3, then he can't get a plus on the top. And if he goes in 2, then Tezuka captures something back with 6-2-6-6. Now he can go +1 there if he flips 5, but he cannot go +1 for cards on the top row. Right? He will go even on the top row. The question is, does he get one extra from flipping 5? On the bottom row, Deli is guaranteed to put up a minus score. Anything he puts up, Tezuka takes more, unless he can take 5, in which case it goes equal. So in the top, he can only get +1 if he flips 5. In the bottom, he can only go even if he flips 5. He can only flip 5 from one of those squares. So he's going to go +1 up top and -1 on the bottom, meaning he flips an extra card up top and gets an extra flipped on the bottom. Or he's going to go even in both, but he can't do better than that, right? It's +1 and even, but they're both dependent on being able to flip 5, and he's only going to be able to flip 5 once. So it's a tie. And I may as well throw open the solver, see if there were ties other than 4 or 8. So I was really excited to see the rare starter. I still think the rare starter is right, but I might be wrong, right? And I might have been wrong without having seen the evidence, but now we've seen some evidence and we've seen no, Deli still managed to get some advantage here. This did not end up giving Tezuka the pressure here. Deli played, I think, a really good move in 6 and ended up taking the advantage and a good move in 1. Um, but I think that might mean the reason I'm not sold that like Deli had this firmly under control and it would never be a problem, though as the game went, Deli had this firmly under control and it was never a problem. The reason I might still stay on this idea if I was Tezuka is my hand was so imbalanced and it ended up being so kind of clunky um, that I wonder if a slightly less imbalanced hand, things go differently, right? Like, he has very few ways to take sevens in this. I think that ended up hurting. So I'm running some solver things. Tezuka goes 5. I thought 5 was good. Um, that was the move I expected. The solver not very impressed. No, the solver thinks this is advantage Deli the whole way. Tezuka has 2 ties. He did have to go 4 or 8. He had to find, nope, I do need to use 1, 5, 6, 7. And he did use it in 4 rather than 8. Um, solver thinks his move's a little better, which is cool. Neither way is ever going to win, though, so it's just which tie you find. And Tezuka found a good one. So, interesting game. Yeah, first turn's hard. I do not think this was like the iron test of this, but I do think it was a test, and it did not bring advantage. All right, gonna pause again while I like blow my nose in nonsense. So we saw the interesting weak corner here, but it didn't come to anything. I'm not sure what to make of that. I still like it. I still think it's the right way. I think the hand with only 7 side to side. Though you'll notice, like, Tezuka played it such that the game did end up in this side to side Z, right? Sorry, S. This isn't a Z. This is an S. I know which way letters work. Um, but in this S, where his cards, had potential to be real sweepers, but another game where second turn manages to get have the advantage. So now we'll see 6-2-6-6 and 2, and 6-7-2-5 owns the bottom. Nope, apparently we won't. Okay, well, 6-7-2-5 and 2 goes up 6-4, so you also can't lose. Not the way my brain would think about this position. Mine would be like, keep the sweeper, don't do the capture. Uh, which is, I guess, an aggressive instinct. Who knew I had an aggressive instinct in my body? But only at the very late game. I also think it's cute to not capture things. So, and I like having sweepers. All right, there we go. Now we're going to see the correct move. 6-2-6-6 and 2. Nowhere else it can go. Nowhere else makes sense. So we'll go into. Oops. I gotta open Discord in a different window. Yeah, the solver thinks this was not a starter with pressure. I think it's wrong. I'm still team weak corner. Yeah, so 6-2-6-6-2 is played. I believe in the weak corner. The only finals or game I played from back in the day that we have on record, I started with a weak corner. I remember being really pleased with that because I thought I was a player who employed the weak corner more than most and more successfully, and it was a emblematic win with a weak corner starter. I'd like to see some adjacent corners this match. We really these aren't. I mean, Deli plays everything, but these aren't players who have been drawn to the adjacent corner, and that's the other thing I'm really looking for. We haven't seen yet. is I think the best way to pressure something is an adjacent corner on this rule set. I think the rule set is very pro adjacent corners. More pro than like any other rule set. Change any rule, making it closed it's still, but change any rule other than the open closed. Add combo, takeaways, same plus plus wall, whatever. All of the rules in effect are perfect for adjacent corners, I think. I think it's like the optimal adjacent corner set. And um, it's not that second turn hasn't been getting advantages here, but I think it's worth trying to press with an adjacent corner, and neither player has yet tried to do so. So another tie, another well played game. Again, I was really hoping that this weak corner starter, did I successfully highlight it? I did. Well done, mate. That this weak corner starter would alleviate some of first turn's issues. But no, it was just the same. First turn had to be really careful. Very good move from Delial 6. And yeah, first turn was just doing great. I do wonder. I do wonder about Tezuka's hand here, though. I think it did too many of the same things. And I understand why he played 3763. Like, it's nice to have this card be able to double capture 3A2 1 and 1. And his 1567 has played really well throughout the matches. Like, it's hard to move off a card that just every game is getting like sneaky pluses and working well. And in this game, we saw the card was great. Like, that was the key card. Uh, yeah, I don't know. I don't know. I guess we'll wait for the next game. I'll pause and we'll be back with the next game. Maybe I'll make a new video because yeah, it's been a while in this video, and also I need more videos because I don't record as many as I used to. Clever. We'll end this recording here.